Welcome to this first session on Unit 507, Operational Management. Operations management is a field that can be at times misunderstood, misconstrued, because it's a multidisciplinary nature. However, its functions form the linchpin of successful businesses everywhere. And success often clearly rests on the shoulders of whether we've had some good operational management. Operational management is chiefly concerned with planning, organising, supervising in the context of production, manufacturing, providing of services, what the outputs of the company are. So we're going to take a look at that, and we'll look at some approaches and some models we can use while we're doing our operational management. Right then, our overall aim for the session is to understand operational management approaches and models. By the end of this session, you should be able to analyse the key components of operational management, including inputs, transformation process and outputs. We'll have a look at that in a second. Describe the components of a viable operational plan. Explain the importance of contingency planning. Describe the policies, processes and procedures that affect operational planning. Evaluate how an operational plan supports business strategy and strategic objectives, and explain how a sales and marketing plans contribute to the development of an operational plan. So let's get started by looking at the key components of operational management. So we've briefly stated what operational management is, and the key areas are clearly planning, organising and supervising and monitoring. So really ensuring that services and the products that we're supplying are up to scratch. And it could be overall if we're an operations manager, or if not, it could be for our team, managing the operations of what our team is contributing, and this would overall contribute to the operational management plan. It's overall execution and control, basically, is what I'm trying to say. It's what we talked about as management when we looked at the first unit and we compared it against leadership. And operational management has some key components, and then we'll link these into other areas. So the key components are, first key component is going to be the inputs. So the raw materials, it could be supplies, it could be data, whatever inputs your team need or your organization needs to produce its products or its services. And then there's the process of transformation, of turning those inputs into the outputs, what your team does or your organization does to produce those outputs. So what do they do with those inputs that changes into the product that the service at the organization? So it's the process includes all the activities of that transformation. They could be staff based, where they're transforming and supporting something, or they could be facilities, machines, equipment, land, buildings based. And then there's the outputs, the products or services supplied. What does your organization produce, or what does your team produce as part of the process? For example, a nuclear processing plant would be producing power, reprocessed fuel and nuclear waste, because many transformation services will produce good and bad, or goods and services. For example, a restaurant will produce an experience for the diner, and also they're producing the foods and drinks that people are consuming. And then this is commonly referred to as a transformational model. And the final component of that is some feedback, that feedback loop. And that feedback is used to control the operations process by adjusting inputs and changing the transformation process to achieve the desired output. We're going to get that feedback from internal and external processes. For example, a chef relies on the flow of information from the customer through the waiter about the quality of the food and whether people liked it, and from that he might make changes over a period of time, buying in different quality ingredients or changing the way he cooks it, adjusting the recipe or the method based on the feedback he's getting. And that feedback is essential for the operations. I said it can come from internal and external. So internal would be things like testing, evaluation, continuous improvements, and then external sources would be from suppliers of the products, or from the services, or from the end customer. And the feedback from the customer is probably the vital one that we all recognise, but the feedback is going to come from lots of people within the process. And key to all that is going to be decision making, as we discussed in Unit 514 when we talked about problem solving and decision making, linked to the designing, the managing, and then the improving of the processes and the procedures and the operations that we're controlling. We're going to look at the improving a little bit more in the next session. But the main decisions in operational management are going to be around, as it's coming up on the screen now, the processes by which the goods and services are produced, so designing and managing them, the quality of what we're producing and the goods and services, the monitoring and controlling of that, the quantity of those goods and services, the capacity of what we're producing, the management of the inventory, the stock of our goods that we've produced and the inputs that we're taking in to produce them, and then the management of the human resources that are going to be critical to that operation taking part. So lots of the things we're going to need to be talking and considering about when we look at our operational planning and making decisions to ensure that our operations run smoothly. But to be able to think properly about our operational management, we're going to need to understand and consider where our boundaries are of our operational responsibility. And as it's just coming up on the screen now, some things are going to be external and outside of our control or limited control, the suppliers, the customers, and the feedback that we receive. And then the other areas where we're going to have fuller control. So we may have control over the resources that we're going to bring in, and how they're input, the process in the middle, and then the output and the types of products and services we're going to produce. Now, within different organisations, that can be different. And then shortly, we'll be looking at an activity where you'll be sort of trying to work out where your boundaries of operational control are. So a quick activity now then to bring some of those things together. I want you to consider your team and department's operational processes. That's about thinking about the main inputs and outputs to your department or team, the main sources of feedback, the main suppliers or customers. Now, they could be internal or external, depending on where you fit into your environment, into your organization. And finally, therefore, the environment which it operates in and the controls that are therefore placed on you. So you're trying to establish here where your boundaries of responsibility and influence are. Produce a sort of transformational process diagram, a little bit like read in slide 5. There's a bit more detail in the activity sheet, but it's going to be different in every situation. There's not a right or wrong. It's about you trying to come to terms with where your operational management control is in this sort of situation.